Verstappen sends final warning to Red Bull. Lewis receives bad news from Ferrari, and Tsunoda receives new target from Red Bull. Let's get into the latest F1 news. What if I told you Ferrari's 2025 Formula One season could be in serious danger? Not because of their drivers, not because of strategy blunders, but because of this car, the SF24. And what's worse, it's not just about performance. This is about whether Ferrari's car is even legal. In this video, we're diving deep into the investigation surrounding Ferrari's SF24, what Fred Vasseur just revealed, and how this could completely shake up the championship. But first, let's rewind. Earlier this season, Ferrari launched the SF24 with bold hopes, a completely revised aerodynamic philosophy, updated side pods, and new suspension geometry. They were clearly gunning for Red Bull, and for a moment, it worked. Ferrari was closing the gap. Leclerc was delivering consistent podiums. Sainz even snatched a win in Australia. But then, whispers started swirling in the paddock. Some teams were raising eyebrows. The SF24's floor, specifically its flexibility, was under question. And that's when the FIA quietly launched an investigation. Let that sink in. One of the most iconic teams in F1 history, being investigated for potentially breaking the rules. So what exactly are they being accused of? Let's break it down. Formula One cars must follow extremely strict rules about aerodynamics. The floor of the car, especially around the edges, must not flex beyond certain limits, because a flexible floor can mean extra downforce without officially breaking ride height rules. It's a clever trick, and one that's been banned ever since the infamous flexi floor controversy years ago. Now here's where it gets interesting. The SF24's floor design showed subtle but suspicious signs of movement during high-speed corners. Onboard footage, trackside analysis, telemetry discrepancies. Other teams noticed it too, and suddenly the FIA wanted answers. But here's the twist. Fred Vasseur, Ferrari's team principal, just made a bold public statement. He claims the SF24 is 100% legal, that all components have passed scrutineering, and that there's nothing to investigate. His exact words, "We have full confidence in the legality of our car. There's no reason to believe otherwise." But here's where psychology comes into play. When someone says there's no reason to believe otherwise, our brains automatically ask, wait, what would the reason be? This opens a curiosity loop. It plants doubt. Even if Ferrari is innocent, the damage is already being done, mentally and politically. Because in F1, perception is reality. So what happens now? Well, the FIA has not officially charged Ferrari with anything, but their inspectors have been seen spending more time around the SF24's garage. More floor samples, more detailed scrutineering after races, more attention than usual. And that in itself is telling, because here's how it usually plays out. First, the FIA observes an anomaly. Then they quietly monitor the part over multiple races. If suspicion grows, they issue a technical directive, a rule clarification, that may ban a specific design. Finally, if the team still uses it, penalties can follow. We've seen this pattern before. Remember Mercedes in 2020 with DAS, or Red Bull's controversial brake ducts? History doesn't lie. But let's talk about the real danger for Ferrari here. Even if their floor is technically legal right now, a new technical directive could force them to change it mid-season. And that's a nightmare. Why? Because a Formula One car is a delicately balanced machine. If you suddenly have to redesign a core component like the floor, everything changes. Downforce, tire wear, cornering speed, even driver confidence. It's like changing the foundation of a skyscraper halfway through construction. This could explain why Ferrari's recent performances have dipped slightly. Are they already adapting under pressure? Here's another psychological tactic teams use. Preemptive denial. By coming out publicly and saying there's no problem, Ferrari might be trying to control the narrative before it spirals. Because in F1, headlines matter. If a team is seen as bending the rules, sponsors get nervous. Rival teams protest more. And fans, well, fans remember. Just ask Red Bull. They're still hearing about 2021. Now, let's not forget the bigger picture. This isn't just about Ferrari. This is about what kind of sport Formula One wants to be. If the FIA cracks down too hard, innovation dies. If they're too soft, teams push boundaries until someone gets caught. It's a constant balancing act between creativity and compliance. Ferrari might be in the gray zone, they might be pioneers, or they might be pushing too far. Time will tell. So what can we expect in the coming weeks? Here's what you should keep your eyes on. Watch for new technical directives, especially anything targeting floor design. Pay attention to Ferrari's pace. A sudden drop could mean they've been forced to change something. Listen closely to what rival teams are saying. If McLaren, Mercedes, or Red Bull start making noise, the pressure will increase. And finally, follow Fred Vasseurs' language. If he starts being less confident in his public statements, that's a red flag. Let's wrap this up with one final question. Is the SF24 actually illegal? Right now, the answer is not officially. But in Formula One, legality is often just one meeting away from becoming controversy. And for Ferrari, a team that hasn't won a championship since 2008, any disruption could derail everything they've built this year. So buckle up, because whether it's cleared or banned, the truth about the SF24 could change the entire trajectory of the 2025 season. And trust me, this story is far from over. Why hasn't Mercedes confirmed its 2026 Formula One driver lineup yet? That's the question echoing through the paddock. Everyone expected an announcement by now. George Russell is the obvious lead driver, and 17-year-old Kimi Antonelli, the Italian prodigy backed by Mercedes for years, he's being groomed for greatness. So, what's the holdup? Well, the truth is more complex than you'd think, and what Mercedes is doing right now tells us a lot about the future of Formula One and about how top teams really operate behind the scenes. Let's unpack it. First, let's talk about George Russell. He's been with Mercedes since 2022, and honestly, he's done everything the team could have asked for. He's quick, articulate, works well with engineers, and importantly, he plays the long game. In a world where consistency and character matter as much as raw pace, Russell is the guy you build around. So why hasn't Mercedes just announced him as their 2026 driver? Because Formula One isn't just about talent, it's about timing, politics, and positioning. By not rushing the announcement, Mercedes is keeping its strategic cards close to its chest. They're watching how the 2025 season unfolds. They're leaving the door open to flexibility, and they're giving themselves room to adjust to the massive regulation changes coming in 2026. Remember, F1 is changing dramatically in 2026. New power unit regulations, new aero concepts, a new competitive landscape. And Mercedes? They've been burned before by locking things in too early. This time, they're playing the long game. Now, let's talk about the wild card, Kimi Antonelli. At just 17 years old, Antonelli has already built a reputation in junior categories as a generational talent. Mercedes has been backing him since he was a kid, and Toto Wolff, who rarely speaks in hyperbole, has compared him to the likes of George and even Lewis in terms of potential. But here's where psychology comes in. Mercedes doesn't want to throw a teenager into the deep end unless the timing is absolutely right. Why? Because first impressions in F1 matter a lot. Just ask Nick de Vries or Mick Schumacher. If your debut season goes wrong, it sticks. It shapes public perception, team confidence, and sponsorship potential. Mercedes knows this. So they're doing something smart. They're not rushing Antonelli into a full-time seat in 2025 just because there's hype. They're letting him develop. They're testing him privately. They're evaluating how he handles pressure, not just lap times. This is all part of a psychological strategy. They're managing expectation for him, for the team, and for the public. By delaying the announcement, Mercedes lowers the spotlight. They create an environment where Antonelli can grow without being chewed up by headlines. But here's what's really interesting. Some insiders believe Mercedes is already committed to Antonelli privately. They just haven't confirmed it publicly. Why? Because they're buying time. Time to evaluate how their 2026 car is progressing. Time to see how rival teams are positioning themselves. And yes, time to negotiate contracts in silence. Think about it. If Mercedes announces both drivers today, it removes all leverage in future conversations. With sponsors, with engineers, even with potential reserve drivers. In other words, this silence, it's power. Now, let's widen the lens. This driver delay is also about brand image. Mercedes wants to frame their next chapter carefully. After Lewis Hamilton's departure to Ferrari, the team knows fans are watching closely. They don't want to rush into a lineup that feels experimental or reactionary. They want to launch a new era, with Russell as the proven leader and Antonelli as the rising star, in a way that feels earned and deliberate, not impulsive. This delay gives them narrative control. And here's another psychological principle: anticipation builds engagement. Every week they delay the announcement, speculation grows, headlines swirl, fan theories explode. Mercedes stays in the spotlight without saying a word. That's free marketing. Think of it like a movie trailer. You don't want to reveal the twist too early. You want people talking, guessing, engaging. Now let's pause for a second. If you're Mercedes, you know the next few years are critical. Red Bull's dominance won't last forever. Ferrari's aggressive moves, like snatching Lewis, are a threat. McLaren's driver pairing is young and hungry. So Mercedes needs to build a driver lineup that isn't just fast, it needs to be future-proof. That means chemistry, media strength, data feedback, adaptability, leadership, all of that. George and Kimi could be that duo. But Mercedes won't pull the trigger until they're sure they're putting the right personalities in the right roles at the right time. And that's why you're still waiting for the announcement. Not because they're unsure, but because they're too smart to be rushed. Let's also not forget, other teams are watching closely. Williams, Haas, Sauber. All of them are interested in Antonelli if he becomes available, even for a loan deal. So by delaying the news, Mercedes keeps control over the narrative, over the market, over the future. And maybe, just maybe, they're still testing their options. Could an outside name sneak into the conversation? Could they line up a surprise third driver to shadow Antonelli in case things go sideways? We don't know, and that's the point. Mercedes doesn't want us to know. They want the story to build, slowly, carefully, until the moment they decide to reveal everything. And when they do, it'll be on their terms. So here's what to watch for in the coming months. Is Antonelli getting more test time? Is Russell speaking more confidently about the team's future? Are Mercedes engineers hinting at 2026 car progress? All of these are clues. Clues that will tell us when Mercedes is ready to flip the script and launch its next era in Formula One. Until then, remember this: in F1, silence isn't uncertainty, it's strategy. And Mercedes, they're playing chess while others play checkers. What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton, one of the most successful drivers in Formula One history, might actually be a problem for Ferrari? I know, sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what Red Bull's Helmut Marko just suggested. And it's not just trash talk, it might reveal a deeper truth about Ferrari's future and why the 2025 season could be a ticking time bomb. Let's break it down. Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari in 2025 was supposed to be a dream pairing. The sport's biggest star, joining the sport's most iconic team. What could possibly go wrong? Well, according to Helmut Marko, a man who's never afraid to stir the pot, plenty. Marko recently called Hamilton a handicap for Ferrari. Yes, his exact word, handicap. But before you write this off as typical Red Bull drama, let's understand what he's actually saying and whether there's any truth behind the controversy. First, some context. Helmut Marko is Red Bull's senior advisor. He's been around the sport for decades. He's blunt, unapologetic, and usually says what others are afraid to. In a recent interview, he didn't just take a shot at Hamilton. He compared him directly to Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull's own driver at RB, and said both are underperforming as second drivers, hurting their teams in the Constructors' Championship. Think about that. He's comparing a 7-time world champion to a driver still fighting for consistency in the midfield. That's not just disrespectful, it's strategic, because behind the insult is a powerful insight about team dynamics. Marko's real point is this: in Formula One today, it's not just about having one great driver. If you want to win the Constructors' title, you need two. Look at McLaren. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are both delivering. They're pushing each other. They're scoring big every weekend. And suddenly, McLaren is a genuine threat. Compare that to Ferrari. Yes, Charles Leclerc is strong, but Carlos Sainz, he's been inconsistent. Injured, out of contract, and soon, he's being replaced by Hamilton. So the big question is, will Hamilton make things better or worse? Now, let's talk psychology. There's a concept called status disruption. When someone new enters a well-established group, especially someone with high status, it can throw off the balance. Think of a workplace. A new boss comes in, great credentials, big name, but suddenly there's tension. People don't know their place anymore. That's what could happen at Ferrari. Leclerc is the team's golden boy. He's been there for years. The team has been built around him. Now Hamilton enters the scene, a superstar with his own crew, his own methods, and enormous expectations. Will they gel or will they clash? Because make no mistake, Lewis doesn't come to play second fiddle, and Leclerc isn't about to give up his throne. It's a chemistry experiment with no guaranteed outcome. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Marco's comments weren't just about Ferrari, they were about the bigger picture, how second drivers can make or break a season. Red Bull has seen it firsthand. Max Verstappen is dominating, but because Sergio Perez has struggled, Red Bull is suddenly vulnerable in the constructors' standings. They're winning races, but McLaren is closing the gap. And Marco knows if your second driver underperforms, your team suffers, no matter how good your number one is. So he's applying the same logic to Ferrari. Even if Leclerc shines, if Hamilton underdelivers, or worse, if the two drivers fight each other instead of working together, Ferrari won't win titles. So is Marco right? Will Hamilton be a handicap? Let's be honest, Lewis isn't the driver he was in 2020. He's older. He hasn't won a race in years, and joining Ferrari, a team famous for political chaos, is no small task. But let's also not forget, this is Lewis Hamilton, 7 world titles, hundreds of podiums. The most complete driver of his generation. You don't just lose that overnight. If Ferrari can give him a fast car, and if they can manage the internal dynamics, Hamilton could be the final piece of the puzzle. But those are two massive ifs. And here's where the psychology really kicks in. In storytelling, there's a principle called tension and release. You build suspense, you raise the stakes, and then you deliver resolution. Formula One is doing exactly that. Hamilton's move is creating tension. Fans are wondering, hoping, doubting. Ferrari is under pressure. Expectations are sky high. And rivals like Red Bull and McLaren are watching it all unfold, ready to pounce if things go wrong. In 2025, that tension will finally be released, and it will either be glorious or explosive. So what should you take away from all this? Helmut Marko might have used a strong word, but his message is clear. In modern Formula One, no team can afford a weak link. Not Red Bull, not Ferrari, not anyone. And while Hamilton brings experience, talent, and global appeal, he also brings risk. A new environment, a new teammate, a new challenge, and no margin for error. Will he rise again, or will the Ferrari dream become a nightmare? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, 2025 is going to be wild. Lewis Hamilton has just dropped a bombshell. He teased a mysterious announcement set for August 8th, and speculation is running wild. Is it his retirement, a shocking team shakeup, or something entirely off the track? Today I'm unpacking what that smoke and mirrors could actually mean, and why you absolutely shouldn't count Lewis out just yet. Lewis's season at Ferrari hasn't exactly been smooth. No podiums in 14 races, a painful 12th place finish in Hungary, his worst of the year, and an emotional post-qualifying comment where he called himself absolutely useless. He even suggested Ferrari probably need to change driver. That kind of self-criticism, it spread like wildfire. But not everyone's reading it as defeat. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur and former Mercedes chief Toto Wolff have come forward to say Hamilton's just venting. Wolff even believes Hamilton still has unfinished business in Formula One. So despite the public frustration behind the scenes, it's not as gloomy as it seems. Then came the tease. Hamilton posted a mysterious image online, a smoking matchstick with the date 0808. The caption, "Follow the smoke." One cryptic image and the internet exploded. Fans and pundits alike started guessing. Retirement? A mid-season exit? But let's be real, Hamilton retiring now? That doesn't add up. He signed a multi-year contract with Ferrari that keeps him in red until the end of 2027. That alone makes retirement highly unlikely. And with the 2026 regulation changes coming, bringing new cars, new engines, and a potential performance reset, it's hard to believe Lewis would bow out before then. So if it's not retirement, what is it? Let's consider Hamilton's other world. Off the track, He's building an empire. His Mission 44 initiative, fashion partnerships like his Dior capsule collection, business investments. He's not just a driver anymore. He's a brand, and brands make announcements. This could be a drop for his next fashion collaboration, a new foundation, or a major business venture. The timing, the visuals, the messaging, it all screams brand storytelling, not sports exit. Still, the F1 community loves drama. The idea of a shock retirement hooks people in. But the reality is less dramatic and more strategic. Lewis is frustrated, yes, but that doesn't mean he's finished. He's still showing up. He's still racing. He's still fighting. And remember this, Hamilton's always been a master of narrative. His life mantra is, "Still I rise." That's not just a tattoo, it's how he lives. When he hits a low, he bounces back harder. His own words after Hungary, "Come back stronger, the fight's not over, don't count me out." That's not retirement talk. That's the calm before the storm. So what do we make of this August 8th reveal? It's probably not what you think. It's not retirement. It's not Ferrari drama. It's likely a message from Lewis the entrepreneur, not Lewis the driver. And that's exactly why it's so interesting. The man has layers. He's not just chasing lap times. He's shaping culture, investing in education, disrupting fashion. So whatever drops on August 8th, it's going to be bold, it's going to be Lewis, and it's going to grab attention. Here's the bottom line. If you're expecting Hamilton to hang up the helmet this week, you'll be disappointed. But if you're curious about how athletes are reshaping their legacy beyond the sport, this could be something big. What do you think it is? A fashion drop? A new initiative? Or something none of us saw coming? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. If you're into F1 and want sharp takes that go deeper than race results, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. And remember, when Lewis says, "Follow the smoke," you better believe there's fire behind it.